bread, the food of mankind for so many millennia. Thin white slices, nicely buttered, but today I give you another thin white slice to spread your butter on. Except it wasn't white when I got it, it was more or less butter coloured, so it's quite appropriate really. So this is a 386 machine that I got recently, not quite sure what state it's in. We're going to take a look at that today. So it's in pretty scabby condition, it's got lots of stickers on, which are quite cool. I like these things, they give you a little bit of history, so we can see this thing last passed its appliance test for the office safety, presumably, on the 7th of the 5th, 1999. And there's a badly removed metal sticker over here, which looks like a kind of office asset number. We have these kind of things at work, so I guess that's what that was. Somebody's tried to scratch it off in a bit of a ham-fisted way, or try and get that off nicely. So look at this, on the 13th of the 8th, 1997, this thing was tested for year 2000 compliance, and the sticker's still on here, a bit shabby, but it's a great thing to actually have a sticker still left on from the days when people thought the world was going to explode as the clock ticked over the new millennium. And yeah, 1997, they were well ahead of themselves, making sure that this PC was fit to work beyond the millennium. And then there's this funky little pull down thing on the front, which I didn't notice at first, but yeah, you pull this down, it's got some info on it, and it's a hard disk type for the type of hard disk that you need for it to auto detect successfully. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh my god, if there's no hard drive in here, I might not be able to get something working, but we'll find out in a second. So it's a really lovely looking PC, I think, very funky, nice big pink button, some nice LEDs for drive activity. You can see it's made by a company called ICL, and this particular model is Personal Computer CS386S. ICL, a fairly prestigious company in the realms of British computing. They had a fruitful 1970s, producing all sorts of mainframes and stuff. The company started in 1968. They were doing really well, and then they hit the 80s, they ran into hard times, and Fujitsu began to buy out shares, and they were a large shareholder in the company for a long time before ultimately in 1998 taking over the entire company. So this PC was out a little bit before that happened, and then Fujitsu ran the ICL brand up into 2002, at which point they disbanded it, and that was the end of that. Anyway, enough of that boring history stuff. Let's take a little peek on the back. So we clearly have some kind of proprietary PSU on here. We've got the usual things: serial port, printer port, and we've got a network card, and we've got PS2. Oh, look at those little mouse and keyboard symbols. They're quite cute, and built-in VGA. So it'll be interesting to see what that is. Pop the lid open. I haven't given this thing the once over. I haven't booted it up or anything. It's supposed to be working, so I trust them. Let's crack it open and see what goodies await us inside. Spiders, dust, hopefully no exploded capacitors. There's one thing I noticed when I was spinning it around. This PC was made in Finland, so I've got to say, I think this is the only computer that I've got that maybe it was made in Santa's factory in Lapland, who knows. So it's a very kind of proprietary case, only held together by 2 screws, and it must have some kind of riser card in there by the looks of it. And moment of truth, away comes the lid to see all of the goodies within. And it's pretty neat. It's all sort of crammed up at the back there, very separate motherboard, not tucked away underneath the drives or anything like that. So there's only one card in there, which is this network card, a nice BNC card. I will probably take it out now and put it back at some point, because I would like to have this machine networked up. The plan is if this machine works nice, is to keep it out. If anybody watched my video about doing up my room, there's a desk on the other side where I want to set up some machines, so this will hopefully become the permanent machine that I use for my early DOS gaming. There's no obvious branding on there, but it's a nice thing to have. It's got a ROM socket as well, so I guess potentially I could use it for XT IDE or something like that, maybe. Useful to have. And there is indeed a riser card there, so we'll get that out. It's only got 2 ISA slots, so we're quite limited to how many expansion cards we can have in here, but hopefully if the VGA is okay, I'll only need to put a sound card in, and then keep the other ones spare for maybe that network card, or maybe some extra storage, some solid state storage like a CF adapter or something. It is absolutely going to need a new clean. Just dust everywhere. Apart from that, looks pretty okay. There's a floppy drive missing its bezel, and I can see underneath that there is indeed no hard drive, so we'll have to find a hard drive that hopefully that little thing on the bottom telling you what hard drive type it needed won't be too much of a problem. It's a very clever contraption they've got for the drive bay here. You've got like a hinged thing that slides back with the floppy drive in. The floppy drive itself just is on like a clip, so it locks in place, but then you can push it back and open it up like this, a bit like a car bonnet, and then you can get it screws at the bottom, and at the bottom there's like a hard drive tray, empty, but that just slides in there, so you can get all your drives pretty damn easy, which is quite cool. There's just a single screw that keeps the motherboard in place, and then it just slides out, except I don't think I'm going to be able to get it out unless I move this plastic contraption, and the plastic drive bay thingy is just held on by these two screws on the bottom of the case, and that just pops out, and then hopefully we'll be able to get the motherboard out now. And yeah, once that's out, the motherboard just sits on 4 little keyed posts. You just slot them out, remembering to disconnect the proprietary power supply, and then the whole thing just pops out. So as I said before, the main issue here I think is just dust, so I'm just going to give it a damn good brush with anti-static brush, and hopefully that'll do the job. So it's interesting connectors for the drives. You can see here that you've kind of got your power and your IDE, and your power and your floppy cable sort of rolled into one. So you've got these little clips. It's a slightly sort of wider than the standard IDE motherboard connector, and the whole thing just pops out, and then when you look at the cable you can see how you've got your power and your IDE as a single piece. And it's the same for the floppy drive, but the floppy drive doesn't come out, it's actually soldered to the board at the other end. The onboard graphics chip's interesting. It's from ATI. It's an ATI 28800-5. So this is, I believe, variously known as the ATI Charger, I've seen it called, and part of the ATI Wonder family. This is a second generation ATI chip, came out in 1990. It's probably a little bit before this PC came out, or around about the time this PC came out, and it was known as the first ATI chip to accept up to 1 megabyte of RAM. So I'm not quite sure how much we got here. I'm guessing it's either going to be 512k or 1 meg. And over there next to it, we've got our Intel 386 running at 20 megahertz, and we've got space for a mass coprocessor as well. So everything's clean. We're just going to stick it all back in, put it all back together, and see if we can find a hard drive to make this thing work. The battery on this is interesting. This is the original, and it's still in good nick. So it's an inorganic lithium battery, which is much less prone to exploding than the NiCad ones that you used to get. And it's also not soldered to the motherboard, it just screws into 2 posts. And the good thing is these are still readily available. This one bought off Amazon, so we can put a replacement in there, and that should sort out keeping our BIOS settings. So there it sits next to the RAM sockets, and you can see the little posts that 2 screws go into. I should have done this outside the case, it was a bit of a fiddle. But there it is, back in place, brand new battery. Just hoping that doesn't get in the way of putting the RAM in. I hope I don't have to take the battery out again to put the RAM in, but we'll see. So there were 2 RAM sticks that came with it, this Samsung stuff, which looked incredibly familiar. So I ran off and had a look in my RAM box, and sure enough, I had this. So you can see it's essentially the same stuff, except the stuff that I have is 7 nanoseconds as opposed to the 8, so slightly faster, so we'll probably put some of that in instead. But for right now, I think I'm just going to stick the original 2 sticks back in just to get it up and give it a power test. It'll be easy enough to fill all 4 of those slots with my stuff. I think my sticks are 1 meg, so that'll be 4 megs, which is probably enough for this machine. Not quite sure what size these are. Then we'll get our motherboard power socket back in, totally proprietary, like a single row, but yeah, I'd be in trouble if this power supply ever went, I think. And then just get the drive bay contraption back in, and then we can slot the riser back in. So I just put the original floppy back in at the top. One thing I did notice was as soon as I plugged it in, things start to happen. So this power button does not appear to do anything at all. I don't have anything like this kicking around, so I'm going to have to live with that. So basically just plugging the cable in the back starts it up, and I'll have to try and figure out if I can fix that power button at a later date. So let's see if it comes to life. So does it start? Yes, it does. And no battery. I just put a new battery in there. Maybe you just have to set something. So insert to go into the BIOS. That's a new one. It's a pretty basic BIOS. No hard drive setup. Just recognize the floppy straight away. Got set date, set time, and the memory, which we're going to increase shortly. One thing that's a bit weird about this, it doesn't actually display the date at time in the BIOS. So you type it in, but then it just remains as set date. So the only way you've got of knowing that there's a flat battery or anything like that is if it messages you on post and says you need to go and set something in the BIOS. I'll just save that for now. I don't really need to do anything else in here until find a hard drive. So hard drives. Began a bit of a sort of search here, a vain search to try and find a hard drive that worked with this machine. Started off with this Fujitsu. I think this was a 4 gig drive, and no joy, it wouldn't recognize anything even with manual settings. It was a bit strange that there were some of the presets in here had higher cylinder counts than what it would let you enter for the user settings. So when I did a user defined setting, I can't remember how many cylinders this hard drive had, but the max it would let you enter is 1024. Anything over that, and it just basically just left it at 1024, but it wouldn't register the hard drive even at a reduced capacity, so that one was a no-go. So then began a search through all of my hard drive collection. I had high hopes for this 85 megabyte one. It seemed like the right kind of size for the era, and it let me install DOS all the way up, but it did have some bad sectors and it absolutely refused to boot. So when you booted, it just said no operating system found, even though you just installed it, and it had formatted and partitioned correctly, which was really quite annoying. While I was installing, I got this message, which always catches me out. I've had it a few times in the past when you install MS-DOS 6.22, and all of a sudden when you fire up your disk 1 into booting into the DOS installer, it suddenly says a program is too big to fit in memory. If anybody ever gets this themselves, it has nothing to do with memory. It just means that your disk 1 is corrupt and you better get a new disk image. And then it let me get all the way through the installer before slapping me in the face and telling me I hadn't installed an operating system. So this disk, I did this twice because I couldn't really figure out why it wouldn't be booting, but yep, it must have just been, I don't know, the sectors of the disk where it was installing the bootloader or something all the time just wouldn't read when you fired it up, even though it doesn't seem there's anything wrong with the disk. But when you format it, it does struggle a bit to get past some bad sectors at a certain point in the disk, so I can only say it must be that. So by this point I'd exhausted all of my stash of relatively small mechanical hard drives, and then I just suddenly thought, you know, I've got old machines that I haven't used for a long time, so I built a 286 a long time ago, and I went and grabbed it, and sure enough it had a hard drive inside, so it should have DOS installed as well. I went to set it up as the user-defined settings described on the disk, and I ran into the same problem again. This hard drive, I don't know exactly what size it was supposed to be, but it had a slightly higher cylinder count than this BIOS allows you to enter, so when I tried to enter it, it just bombs you back to 1024. So it has the correct number of heads, the correct number of sectors. So having done all of that, we can save it and see if it boots. Moment of truth. There you go. So got a working hard drive. Its reading is 500 and something megabytes. That will do for a 386. I'm only ever probably going to have one game or two games loaded at any one time. So with all of those things in place, I've got a hard drive with a bezel on front, and we can put it all back together and see about getting the lid back on. And while I think about it, get the original RAM out and replace it with 4 1 meg sticks of the 7 nanosecond stuff that I already had. Just for confirmation, run mem, and there we go, 4 megs, so that should be enough for this, I think. Now, I was quite excited because I remembered I had a 387, but I was a bit gutted when I got it out because it's one of the PGA types, and alas, the socket for this is one of the PLCC types, and it won't fit. I look on eBay and there wasn't anything going in the PLCC package, so they have them on AliExpress, so I've ordered one. They were very reasonably priced, so it'll be interesting to find out how that works when I get it. So we need a sound card, and I've chosen this. This is one of my Sound Blaster 32s. It's the cool one with the chip from the OR64. This is the CT 3670 and can be flashed with the OR64 BIOS. So basically it just becomes an OR64 with sort of SIMs instead of the crazy proprietary memory modules that they needed. But I'm going to leave it as it is, and I've got 2 megs of RAM to put in it, and that should be just enough for some sound fonts for some cool MIDI sounds on those early DOS games. So this card doesn't have real OPL, it has Creative Zone CQM, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not that discerning. I've never really had a problem with it, and yeah, that'd be cool. And with all that in place, we can get the lid back on. I've given it a damn good clean. You'll get a better look in a second, just while we get it on. There's a few little rusty bits that I've put some rust inhibitor on, so hopefully that won't spread anymore. I am quite relieved it all works, and had a lot of trouble with it. I was beginning to think at one point that I wasn't going to get it working. I would like ultimately to get this thing working with compact flash. I had a quick look around, but because I've been moving my room around so much, I have a couple of compact flash adapters, but I couldn't find any of them. So I'm going to try and get it up and running with a compact flash card in the near future, so I don't have to worry about the hard drive conking out on me, which I think, given that this is the only hard drive I've got that it probably works with, it's probably better to be safe and get some solid state in there. Just a shame I might have to get one of those hard drive clickers. I think Serta Shop sells them, so it sounds like a hard drive even if it isn't. And there it is, all clean and ready to rock. So we need to get some sound drivers installed, get everything plugged in at the back, and we'll boot it up and see if we can get that sound card set up. I've got the discs there. Yeah, that button definitely doesn't work, so at some point in the very near future, probably revisit this machine for a short video just to fix that button. I also noticed that the LEDs for the hard drive activity and stuff aren't working, so I'll have to figure out what's going on with those. I did notice the wire was a little bit frayed when I was putting it back together, so I'll try and sort that out, try and sort the button out, and yeah, maybe try and put some solid state storage in there as well at some point. In the meantime, let's see if we can get the sound card working. The installers are the cool ones that use the Creative Bulletin Board system, so basically you copy the file into a folder where you want to have your bits and pieces installed. So if you create one called SB32 or whatever, hit the exe file and the bulletin board system pops up and it extracts all of the various other files that you need to actually install the software. One of those files is the install.exe. So of course this is a plug and play card, so you have to make sure you run your CTCM to begin with to configure the card, set all of its bits and pieces up, and then you can install the actual software for all of your mixers and your util and all the other things that you need. I know some people say that the PMP cards can be a bit fussy with DOS and older machines, but to be honest, I've never had any trouble. This seemed to run through fine. It set up everything for me in my config sys and autoexec.bat, so yeah, pretty easy. At the end of that, you can run diagnose.exe to check it all out. and with these cards it even includes a memory checker, so you can make sure that your RAM for storing your sound fonts is all working properly. And then finally you get in to test your sounds. Is there going to be sound? Yes. So of course the crucial part of this is there's an extra step which you don't get on your normal Sound Blaster 16s, and that is to check that the software synth is working with your sound fonts, and that's probably going to be the thing that I'm most worried about with this card. So let's see if it works. Yes, it does. So we're wired for sound. So it's a pretty good, cool card to go with this machine, I think. It'd be perfect for sort of all the earlier, slower DOS stuff, I think. Now we just need a game to play. It's going to be my favourite, Dune 2, because it's got such an awesome soundtrack. We just need to get this machine set up where it's going to live permanently, get this installed, and see if we can get it all set up and working. And there it is, in all of its glory, in its final resting place. We're going to get this installed and get it running. So the idea is, for anybody who watched the video about when I did this remote, this desk over here is just going to be for gaming, and I want to have it set up permanently for all sort of eras of retro gaming. This machine will live right there. Might have to move to the side a little bit and a bit of rearranging because I need to get an LCD in alongside that. And this machine's going to do all the early DOS gaming and the slower sort of speed sensitive stuff like Wing Commander. I'm going to have an XP machine that will run through DVI on the LCD, so that gives me my XP gaming. And also a project that we'll be doing either next week or the week after is to build a Windows 98 machine built around Tualatin Pentium 3, and that will probably live on the floor there and also run through this VGA monitor. So I will have a nice DOS rig, a nice Windows 98 rig, and a decent XP rig, and I should just be able to sit down and play any of the games that are on my bookshelves. So at that point we'll call it a day with this video. It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed watching me put this machine back together, and to end it we shall just leave you playing through the intro of Dune 2 on this very cool 386 machine. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Known as Dune. Land of sand. Home of the spice melange. The spice controls the empire. Whoever controls Dune controls the spice. The Emperor has proposed a challenge to each of the houses.
The house that produces the most spice will control Dune. There are no set territories and no rules of engagement.
Vast armies have arrived. Now, 3 houses fight for control of Dune. The noble Atreides. The insidious orders. And the evil Harkonnen. only one house will prevail. Your battle for doom begins.